Imagine you're just going about your day and you hear over the news about something called Honkai that they told you not to worry about, but then the Honkai comes and snaps your neck from behind. Not literally, but that's what it felt like for the normal people back in the previous era when their lives were turned upside down by the Honkai. Among many of these normal people is Kevin, a good-looking young man that is athletic and also popular. He likes this girl May, and for any names like this one that you may recognize, please understand that despite having the same looks and names, they are not the same person that we know from the main story and are in fact completely unrelated. The story never questioned this, so too do we not. So the relationship between Kevin and May was all fine and dandy until the Honkai came knocking. At this point in the previous era, Honkai were considered a minor disturbance and were taken care of with little difficulty. Though there was a new type of Honkai that started appearing called a Herrscher, it was a relatively light threat to deal with, but that would soon change, and the couple will play a central role in it. So there's a UN-type organization in charge of dealing with all things Honkai that has been eyeing May for a while because she got the smarts, which they deem to be a great asset to the cause. They are the Fire Moth. They came to recruit May following the eruption, and also, by extension, Kevin, because they are basically inseparable. And in a few years since the couple joined, Fire Moth has defeated 3 extra Herschers, which brings their kill count to 6. On the surface, everything seems to be at an acceptable level, but due to the constant fighting over the years, they find that it's getting more difficult to properly respond, and something needs to be done to swing the odds back into their favor, and it needs to happen fast, because the Honkai turned up the heat quite literally with the Herrscher of Fire. Again, not the Himiko. The 7th turned out to be more powerful than anything Fire Moth has seen when they realized that its power level was over 9,000. That last pad was obviously made up, but the gist is that they were outmatched. So to stand a chance, May came up with a project to create what Elon Musk could only wish to do: genetically engineered cat girls. Humans with Honkai-infused steroids extracted from Honkai beasts, which has the side effect of modifying certain parts of the human body. Kevin was the first recipient of this project, coming out with ice power which he used to completely stomp over the 7th Herrscher, winning the battle. And combined with new innovations such as the Divine Key series, the Fire Moth has gotten a massive boost in firepower, which almost made them look like they had a chance. I say almost, because most Herschers that came after required a different approach to take down that isn't just going to where the thing is and beating it up. The 8th just hides and comes up with a collection of words which if you read you die, just like school. The 10th is a hive mind with numerous bodies which employ guerrilla warfare to go for targets of opportunity. But despite the unique set of challenges Fire Moth face, they have shown to be capable of overcoming them by leveraging their massive firepower, which has grown quite a bit since its inception. The methods they took to achieve this can be regarded as highly questionable, like sending ill-prepared combat units on a suicide mission in hopes of turning them into super soldiers after they were unknowingly injected with an unknown substance. This was implied to be repeated many times, with Fuhua being a notable person that came out of it alive. This would give the people in Moth some not so bright ideas that will continue to fuel the conflict going on in the current story. More on that in a bit. So at this point, Fire Moth, with its continuously increasing firepower, retained much of their strength through the constant fighting and has held its ground against the Honkai, though not without losses, especially true for the overall population. But for the Honkai, they have other plans. Because the next Herrscher, the 11th, can completely disable Honkai energy, which just about breaks everything in their Moth arsenal. It was so bad. The battle claimed pretty much all the best fighting force the Fire Moth had, except for 13, which after the fact came to be collectively known as the Flame Chasers that we see in Elysian Realm. It was a disaster, but there's still a chance, because the next Herrscher that came was completely harmless. The Herrscher was a young girl that despite being identified as a Herrscher, doesn't actually have any powers and is perfectly normal. So what would Fire Moth do when they find themselves a passive Herrscher? Do they A. establish friendly relations with the young girl in an attempt to understand a Herrscher? B. Persuade her to either quarantine herself or relocate to a safe place for observation while making sure all her needs are met? Or C. The nuclear option. Try and recruit her for the cause, which is pretty much unheard of at this point. They decide to put her in solitary confinement, experimented on her, disregarding her safety, ending up in her death. This is fine until we realize that she did literally nothing to deserve this, which is one thing because killing her just so happens to trigger the dormant Herrscher powers. There's also something that I haven't mentioned, that this Herrscher was the little sister of Sakura, one of the Flame Chasers. Sakura, who is close to her sister, is rightfully pissed off by how she was mistreated by her colleagues, and in a last-ditch effort tried to rescue her by force, basically rebelling against Fire Moth, though she was too late and was KIA'd by the unleashed 12 Herrscher, which went on to take control of the facility she was kept in. That facility also happens to house hundreds of nuclear warheads, which the Herrscher fired at all the remaining remnants of civilization, completely wiping them out, which just about leaves the 30,000 people in this Fire Moth base as the only group of human left. Now, it was said that there were 14 Herschers, so we still have 2 more to go over, and it happens to be that the next Herrscher was revealed to be Alicia. At this moment, I do not know any finer details other than that, so I'll just say a couple things. Alicia said it herself that she would play the villain to unite the fragmented Fire Moth, and it still needs to be seen if she achieved what she wanted, but whatever happened in that time frame, it would certainly end in her death. And when the final Herrscher descends, Fire Moth would be defeated despite doing everything they can to desperately turn the tide of battle. But humanity was not lost. The previous era foresaw the worst case scenario and had prepared for it, which brings us to the current era timeline. Fire Moth had directives in place to aid the new civilization. There are a good amount of these, but none can be compared to the infamous Project Stigma, forcing millions to come into contact with Honkai to force a sliver to develop powers, which is basically the same approach they took in their era. As a player, it's easy to put the current era on a pedestal due to their unprecedented achievements, but it's also vital that we also don't judge the previous era entirely by its mistakes, because as much as their approach can be considered unethical and all, many things that they left behind continues to aid the current civilization in their ongoing fight with the Honkai, whether they intended for it or not. The Divine Keys, the Stigma technology, and many others are what gave the current era the option to do things differently, as to not repeat their past civilization mistakes. As one of the Flame Chasers Sue puts it, our era did not enjoy the luxury of choice, but your era does. And before this video ends, we are at a point where a group that carries the will of a bygone era clashes with a new force that differs in their approach compared to the old. Whether they find a common ground remains to be seen. In this new series, I will take you through the important events in the previous era in details and how each of them affects the bigger picture. This is the groundwork for future videos in the coming weeks that will primarily be focused on the people involved, because of how much there is to be told and how much of it is sprinkled around every form of media. Till the next time as we dive deeper into this one hell of a story that hasn't been fully told. This has been Potato Almanac. Thank you for watching.